Hello, and welcome to the Catholic Homeschool Podcast. I'm Paola Siskanik, your host, and I am a wife, a mom, a grandma too, and I am also a 25-year veteran of homeschooling. It is an honor and a privilege to welcome Cathy Duffy to today's podcast. Cathy and I had met many years ago when she was a speaker. You will see she is a wealth of information, and in particular, one of the most asked questions that we get in our community is about learning styles. But before we dive in and I read the bio, so for those few who have not known or heard of Cathy, I'm going to begin with a prayer and then read her bio. So let's begin as we begin all things in the name of the Father, Son, the Holy Spirit. Amen. Dear Lord, as we come together, I want to thank you for the grace of another day, for the graces of our family, the graces of our yes to marriage, the openness to children, and the gift to be their primary educator. May you please bless all the families that hear this. Bless Cathy and her work. We ask to be the hands and feet in this world, and we will pray a Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou amongst women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners, now and at the hour of our death. Amen. And Saint Joseph, please pray for us. In the name of the Father, Son, Holy Spirit. Amen. Welcome, Cathy. I'm going to read your bio. Let's get that.
Okay.
Yes, sounds great. All right. For those of you who don't know Cathy, she is a well-known curriculum expert. She has researched and written about curricula for home education for more than 35 years. Her website, which we will put the link up many times, is CathyDuffyReviews.com. And it is truly the go-to resource for homeschool curriculum reviews. We see it's everywhere in our community. People reference it all the time. Please go visit. Anyway, she also has a digital book, How to Choose Homeschool Curriculum. And it walks you through the process of choosing the resources that will work best for each child and each family. Cathy has home educated her own 3 sons all the way through high school and has taught numerous groups of both children and adults. Well, welcome. Thank you, Cathy, for joining me today.
Oh, I'm really glad to be here. This is a fun topic.
It is a great topic. And, I wanted us, because there's so much ground to cover, to really dive right into this conversation. I just wanted to let you know, Maureen and I, and if you haven't seen it, folks, go to the YouTube channel or our podcast, is we did a little bit about the different educational philosophies. Okay, so sort of as a precursor to this, which was, talking about unschooling and Montessori and classical. But this is the other piece of the puzzle that people really want to hone in on. So first of all, what are learning styles?
Yeah, good place to start.
Yep.
Learning styles, this is a tool to help us understand what educational methods are going to work best for each of our children. If we can teach them more effectively the first time around, then we don't have to reteach them over and over again. That's just discouraging for everyone. Mm-hmm. So paying attention to our children's learning styles helps us figure out what methods are going to work best. And I use a simplified approach. It's based on the Myers-Briggs personality inventory. To identify 4 learning styles that I call Wiggly Willy, Perfect Paula, Competent Carl, and Sociable Sue. It's probably good to point out, not more than once, that people aren't strictly one learning style. Oftentimes they're a mixture of these. Okay, we're just not that neat to fit into those little boxes.
Yeah. You paint a picture by giving those descriptive words.
Yeah, it helps us think about what we see sometimes. But learning styles encompasses temperaments, the physical aspects of learning, forms of social interaction. For example, one child might enjoy more working with a group, interacting in a group setting, while another child prefers independent study. Or one child does better with hands-on learning and the other one finds hands-on learning just a total waste of time. So those are the things we pay attention to. Now, there are lots of different learning style approaches. This is just one method of many. They are all useful, but they focus on different aspects of learning. There is absolutely no perfect system that will take into account every variable. So, this is one way to do it. And, you could try a few others and see if they help you too. So that's what it is.
So I think if, really when you're putting kids in a brick and mortar school, you're not spending those times actually witnessing unless, they have lots of homework, but even that, it's tailored to that curriculum. So as homeschool parents, we kind of have that leg up to be able to view that. So how do we figure out their different learning styles? Is there a step-by-step process or trial or error? How do you figure it out?
Okay, well, the starting place is really with ourselves. We have to figure out where we're coming from, because oftentimes the biggest clash we end up with in our homeschooling is our teaching style, which tends to by default become our learning style, our own learning style preference becomes our teaching style. I said that backwards, but yeah. And then we have to look at our children's learning styles and what we prefer. Sometimes it's challenging to pull those together, but starting with ourselves helps us be aware of our tendencies to help kind of take the blinders off so we can see what's going on with our children and how it differs from what we like to do.
Right.
So like if you're a mom, you like it all organized, you like everything laid out, lots of worksheets, everything predictable and controlled. But you've got a daughter who's just inquisitive and would rather, talk and do and not do worksheets. Then you've got a problem. You've got to figure out how to make that work. Yes. So we start by figuring out our own learning style. Here's just a quick exercise we can try, for those who are listening to help kind of get a sense of this. Let's say you just got a new iPhone and maybe you're just totally unfamiliar, never had an iPhone before, okay? So blank out anything you know about iPhones. So what would you do? If you just pick up that phone and trial and error until you figure something out, that's a good wiggly willy approach, just have at it. If you like to read the online manual, maybe watch a tutorial, try to get lots of info before you try figuring it out, then you might be a perfect Paula because she wants to know the right way to do it.
Right.
Competent Carl might look at a tutorial or a manual, but then he'll figure it out on his own. He's not likely to ask for help. Where perfect Paula might ask for help, competent Carl won't. He's a do-it-myself type person. Sociable Sue, she won't bother with the manual. She'll ask a friend to show her how to do it. It's only other people that can help her. So that's kind of a real rough way to look at it. And we'll get into more detail when we start talking about the children's learning styles.
Yes.
And I do have more about that in the How to Choose book and my older 102 Top Picks book. There's the information on learning styles in there too.
We didn't mention the 102. I mean, so Cathy has done other books as well.
Well, 102 was the previous book, but people are still wanting to buy it. But How to Choose is, I tried to make it cheaper and more accessible. So, the How to Choose is a less expensive version, and it's really tied to the website, which is all accessible for free.
Yeah.
So, I thought that was a better way to go.
But you see, again, different learners, maybe, again, they need the physical, the concrete, right?
Well, they want the whole book, the 102, where I've narrowed down to the best things and they can see it in a chart. Perfect Paula would love, just that's the way to go for that.
Yes, exactly. Yes. Very good.
Anyway, so after you've got some idea of your own learning style, then you can start to figure out your own children's learning styles.
Okay. And again, it's by recognizing some of those characteristics on a day-to-day when you're working with these children.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Just and is it something that you kind of, get intuitively? I mean, can you kind of get it wrong as well? You know what I'm saying? Does it take a
Well,
while to get to understand
it,
these?
it takes a while, and it's not always obvious with young children because they change. I mean, you think about most 2-year-olds. They tend to look like what I call the Wiggly Willies because they're just not, they don't have the maturity to work at at a level where they're stopping and thinking about things and planning ahead. They just don't do that. So the maturity in learning styles gradually starts to show, and you just watch your children, and really it's what's working best right now is the question you're wanting to ask. Not, you don't want to box them in and say, well, they're Wiggly Willy now, so they'll be Wiggly Willy 5 years from now.
Right.
They can shift.
Right.
So we'll see what happens.
So, and I know this sounds like a very basic question, but it's like, what works, what doesn't work. You know what I mean? I would say, even with little kids, if they're having resistance, is that like a clue that I'm not reaching them? Because I hear that question often. People are like, are they just being lazy, or am I, yeah.
Yeah. And sometimes our kids are lazy, but if you're always in tears, battling over getting through school, just step back from it and look at the learning styles. Oftentimes, that's the key to it. I had a friend who homeschooled for just 1 year, and she got a curriculum that was just, packaged, rigid. And this gal was a very creative type person, and her children were more like her. And it was just like the worst combination. And I tried to get her to shift gears, but I already bought this curriculum, so I'm going to do or die,
Right.
She died, it didn't work.
Yes.
So
don't I'm hearing that message, don't give up. And, it's not necessarily you have to throw things out,
right.
But it sounds to me like what you're saying is a process.
It is. And we'll get into some more detail about, how, because we just want to target where we need to use learning styles. It's not like you have to revamp everything all the time.
Okay. So, excellent. That's great. So,
okay.
Well, then the natural question would be like, is one learning style better than the other? You know what I'm saying?
Let's kind of step back here. Let's take a few minutes and talk about, I'll describe the children's learning styles so that the listeners, our audience here, you'll have a better idea of what we're talking about. Okay. And I'll do this in terms of children. So I'll go into this a little more. Wiggly Willy, this is the child who is a hands-on learner. They're often lively, creative, but they can be difficult to teach. They don't like to sit still. My oldest was a really strong Wiggly Willy, and I just had this, he was always falling off chairs. The chairs didn't work for him very well. They need to be able to move around a lot. Usually they're not interested in sitting still and thinking. And again, my reference to 2-year-olds. This is more like your 2-year-old in some ways.
Right.
Wiggly Willies are spontaneous. If something sounds fun, they want to do it now. They can be impulsive, leaping before they look, that sort of thing. And of course, they don't like to plan and organize. They're living in the moment. They don't want to be, they're not motivated by, I'll, work hard, get good grades so I can go to college. I mean, that's just not on the radar for them. They tend to have a short attention span unless they're doing something of their own choosing, like if they're working on a complicated Lego construction, they could sit there for hours. But if you ask them to do a page of math problems, 2 minutes and they're bored silly, So yeah, it's really difficult. And sometimes these are the kids who get labeled as having attention deficit disorders and those kinds of problems. And it's because of their learning style, and it is not easily accommodated in the typical classroom. So a lot of Wiggly Willies end up homeschooled because the teachers say to the parents, maybe you should think about homeschooling.
Exactly. Because homeschooling, naturally, you can tailor those things.
Yeah. It's a lifesaver for some of these kids.
Correct. correct. And
Okay.
and then I liked how your friend had said, you said your friend was more creative. We'll talk about that, but I'm just saying you can tailor the curriculum to a wiggly willy, maybe even the timing of your subjects, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, every piece of it.
Yep.
Okay, so let's go on to Perfect Paula. She's kind of the opposite of Wiggly Willy. This is the responsible child. She likes to see that everything's done correctly, and sometimes to see that everybody else does everything correctly. She likes to run the show. She likes things structured, planned, organized. She wants to know what the schedule is, that sort of thing. She wants to know what's happening. Now, because of that, she's easier to teach. She's more, amenable. She'll go along with what's supposed to be done, but she tends to have a narrow comfort zone. She seldom acts spontaneously. She's not comfortable with creative activities if you don't give her specific guidelines. Like if you want her to do an art project, she'll ask, what's it supposed to look like, rather than just, give me a pile of supplies and have at it. So very opposite the Wiggly Willy in that sense.
Yes.
They tend to follow the rules, respect authority, and sometimes your Perfect Paula feels like the world's going to come to an end if other people aren't doing what they're supposed to.
Yeah.
Yeah. So in a lot of ways, Perfect Paula likes the typical traditional school curriculum, and they like to feel like they're doing the same things other children their age are doing. They like to be a part of groups. They like that security of being, in the group doing what everyone's doing. And that can be double-edged too, because sometimes the group's not doing what should be done. And they need approval, affirmation. They need you to be telling them.
Looking out at the world, kind of outward facing and comparing all the time, right?
Yes. But she needs that coming, the affirmation coming back to her frequently.
Wow.
Okay. Because, she's so worried about that. She can be, paralyzed if she doesn't get it.
Wow. Okay. Wow.
Okay.
Yes. Great.
Okay. Competent Carl. For competent Carl, control is his key issue. He wants to be in control of himself, his surroundings, and even when they're young, competent Carls, you can't always tell when they're young, but it sometimes shows up with a child who insists on doing everything themselves. I'm going to help you do this. No, I'm going to do it myself. That sort of thing.
Yes.
When it persists, with everyththing, you've got a competent Carl on your hands.
Sure. Some young adults like that. They got to learn it the hard way. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, competent Carl, sometimes Wiggly Willies are like that, but competent Carl tends to be analytical. He, likes to do problem solving, figure things out on his own. So he will be thinking about it, where Wiggly Willy might want to do it on his own, but not think about it. He'll just do it.
A little, right. More spontaneous Wiggly.
Yeah.
And then competent Carl is really more, would you say they're more internal, think things
more internal. Some of them can be extroverted and they might talk out loud what they're thinking, but there's a thought process. I had a good example of this at a nephew. Very strong, competent Carl, when he was probably 7 or 8 or something at a restaurant, and they give you those placemats that have a maze on it.
Yes.
And a competent Carl child will look at it and figure it out before that crayon or whatever touches the paper. They'll want to know where it's going before they mess it up.
Wow.
Wiggly Willy, trial and error. That's, just this kind of thing you'll notice, just you watch are they sitting back and pondering first? That's a clue. You've got a a competent Carl.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes.
But they're self-motivated. They like to work independently. They, just love to be left alone to do it on their own schedule. But sometimes they kind of go too far. They have difficulty relating to peers, getting along with people. And they find it easier to work on their own than to figure out how to get along with others.
Okay.
So that's something to kind of watch out for.
Right.
Yeah.
And then your last one.
Yeah, and Sociable Sue, she's kind of an opposite to competent Carl in many ways, because she's your social butterfly. She's got the warm, responsive personality. If you've got an activity and you ask if she wants to participate in the activity, one of the first questions she'll ask you is, who else is doing it? Because if it's not people she wants to be around, forget it, or if it's alone, forget it, that's not how she works. She's very interested in people. And, on a different level, she's more interested in concepts than details. Sociable Sues like to do things quick and dirty, just get it over with. This is not your perfectionist. She just, let's get the work done, get on to the social activity.
Yes.
They tend to like novelty. You can have a new textbook or something, they get all excited about it. A week later, oh no, that's boring. But the novelty.
Also want approval, like perfect Paula?
Well, she cares about what other people think, but it's about her self-image. It's not about doing it right. It's more just wanting people to like them. They might, they might act up or do something else to get recognition from people. They want input from other people, but it's not for doing things right. Okay.
And that's important for the mom. What kind of feedback are you giving your children? Yeah.
Right.
Very
good. They're so different, but Sociable Sue really does need to be recognized for what she does. That matters so much because they want to impress people. Sometimes they'll go above and beyond to impress people. And for the same reason, they're very vulnerable to criticism. It matters.
Right.
So,
Exactly. I do remember a family friend, the mom would always put things in red, if they were wrong. And it just so upset that personality again, because again, she'd put it up and it was like, no, it could not, it crushed her in the sense, to see even just the color red meant, even if it was just to improve and it was just in a loving manner, it just really set her off.
So you got to figure out how to do that. Maybe it's just sitting down and having a conversation with nothing marked up, or helping them, asking them questions to help them see what it is that's an issue.
Yeah.
But you had asked the question before we started down this, with the descriptions about, is one learning style better than another? And and again, as I said before, people are not exclusively one or another. So, we're usually a kind of a mixture. Maybe something is dominant and something less so. Those of us who are kind of even, we have a hard time figuring out where we would fit in. You're probably going to have less problems because you're not really strongly leaning one direction. So that's a blessing for us and for our children. So
So now, so that is wonderful. Getting to understand, I think, and like as you said, even though there's an overlap, there is definitely. I mean, I have 7 children. They all come with these distinct personalities. I can see how each one of them fits into those boxes, not exclusively, as you said, but then also, so start first with yourself and then start observing your children. Okay, so great. Now I've got 4 kids, 4 personalities, and I'm one of those. I'm going to go crazy, Cathy. Can you help me? What can I practically do with this?
So, it's not as bad as it sounds. We don't have to revamp the whole curriculum. If you're just choosing curriculum for the first time, it really helps to have this in mind. But, if you're in the middle of it, you've got your curriculum, look for the areas where your child is struggling. Find out where you need to target the attention rather than trying to revamp everything by learning styles. Because typically for our kids, some subjects will be more difficult than others. Some will be strong in math and science and weaker in reading and language arts, or vice versa. That's kind of a normal split. So if you've got a child who's struggling in math, but they're doing okay in language arts, don't worry about language arts, worry about math.
Yes.
And then you want to think of it this way. You want to teach to their learning style strengths. Teach them with methods that make it easiest for them to grasp new concepts. And then once they've got a concept, you can use other learning style methods that might not be as easy for the child. But, you've kind of lessened that initial load they're trying to work through.
Yeah.
So maybe you're going to use other learning style methods for review and practice, And let's talk about a Wiggly Willy. So maybe you're going to use a Wiggly Willy math program, hands-on math program to help Wiggly Willy catch the concepts at the beginning. Then, once you've got the concepts introduced and he seems to have grasped it, you might play games to do practice and reinforcement.
Gotcha.
And when you're reviewing, then you bring in the worksheets and the other things that are so difficult for him.
Right.
So you try to make sure he's got it first.
Wow.
Before you go
to my ears, Cathy. You know what I'm saying? It really is.
Well, and even then, when you do the worksheets, you do it sparingly. if the child hates worksheets, don't just do endless. Right. I had this with my granddaughter. Hated worksheets. I've worked with her from time to time, and I could just see, as soon as she's handed a worksheet, she just goes into the, I can't do it. It's too hard. I'm dying, Yes. And so I pulled out, we were working on just addition. And so I pulled out a deck of cards, just standard playing cards. Okay. Face cards are worth 10, aces are 1, the others their value. And we're going to play addition war. So you play 2 cards, you have to add them together. Who wins?
Right.
She's doing all this mental math in her head to figure out who's winning. And she'll tell me who's no problem at all.
Right. Having fun with grandma.
Yes. Yes. And I've told her, Mom, this is the way you teach her.
Yes.
It'll work.
Yes.
And a lot of us do, because it doesn't look like standard schooling. We think, oh, well, that doesn't really count, but it does.
Yes. I'm so glad you said that, Cathy. Please say that again, because you're giving yourself permission to think outside that. Yeah.
Well, it has to be what works best for the child, not what anybody else is doing. I don't care what anybody else thinks. What's going to work best?
Right. So I know it's that, and it from your children, when a child really feels that sense of success internally, working from that strength, it just opens the door to more discovery, to more learning. And you're really, you can see that. It's just a beautiful thing to witness, I think, and honor as a parent, But as a parent, we do feel like, as you said, we want authority too, to say, well, moms usually feel I'm going to miss something, or I'm going to ruin my children.
Especially if you're a perfect Paola mom.
Yes, it's true. That's true. But I still think deep down, they always want to cover all the check marks and getting them to high school. But you're right. So again, let's get back to learning your learning style, which helps.
And part of that, this is kind of stepping outside learning styles. Part of that is identifying your goals, knowing what you want to accomplish very clearly.
Right.
So that you can think about it in terms of, how do I get to that goal, not how do I complete that book or that program.
Yes. Again, another wonderful gem. And that's right, Cathy. In school, and many of the homeschooling books too are designed for an academic year, so are we talking about mastery of concepts, sometimes, versus finishing the book? Right.
Yeah. Because finishing the book just can't be your goal. It just
exactly doesn't work.
We all remember school, finishing books or not finishing the books mostly.
Right. Well, we do. I think we have a little time here that I just wanted to talk about a little bit about if we figure out the learning styles, what do we? I want to know specifically, how do I pick the books that go with this? Because I do see that overwhelming. Does your website talk about learning styles and curriculum? How do I figure that out?
It's more in the books, because that's too long a story to get into. But I do talk about learning style features in the reviews. That's why I write such long reviews.
Yes,
I know for some people they are long. But they're long.
Yes, because you really have taken the pains to go through, so that, because it's hard for people unless they physically, go through the book, but also don't have the experience with that curriculum. You've reviewed thousands of books, so you can immediately start targeting all the important aspects to give us a feel of that. So yes, those reviews are amazing. So they'll be in some of those. Yes.
Yeah. But we can take some time here and we'll talk about methods that can work best with the different learning styles.
Yes, please do.
So we'll start with Wiggly Willy again.
Mm-hmm.
multi-sensory learning helps a lot. The more you can get his different senses involved, the better, because again, they're very easily distracted. They're moving around, whatever. So if you can have them hearing and seeing at the same time, maybe moving physically too, whatever you can involve more of their senses in what's going on for learning, the better. So hands-on activity is just a natural part of that too. Like teaching science, this is getting more concrete. Teach science with lessons that lead the lesson with the activity or experiment, rather than giving the information first. Let them do it so they've got that concrete experience that they care about, then give them the information that follows along afterwards. And a number of science programs like the Science and History series is set up that way. And
I know, like TOPS, I don't know, they're task-oriented projects, right? So the kids are actually making the equipment that they're going to work on, and by doing it, they learn the concept. Right. So that's great.
Yeah.
So next.
Well, I'm still in the Wiggly Willy here. There's more. There's more that we could games and competition, like I talked about the addition war. Those kinds of things work well. Computerized curriculum can work well, but not the ones where you have to read closely and put in exact answers. More about strategy games. Even math drill games. Math drill on a computer is much better for Wiggly Willy than work pages.
Okay.
There's lots of fun games out there. So, and there's some that are even free. I've got those on my website. So there's lots of good stuff. And they have trouble if you put them into a class, even if it's an online class. I think a lot of people say, oh, well, they like video, so they put them into video classroom stuff on the computer. Wiggly Willies will hate it if they have to watch a classroom presentation where it goes on and on, anyways. So if you're going to do something on the computer, it's got to move along quickly. Lectures or, talks should be no more than 5-10 minutes, just keep it short. Anything that goes after that 5 minutes, they're not hearing it. So you just have to know that. And parents, if you're reading a book to them, they're not absorbing it if you go on too long. If you see their eyes glaze over, they're off, don't keep on. You're wasting your time. Yes. Sometimes you can have them pay attention longer by letting them do something physically while they're listening, like jumping on a trampoline while you're reading aloud.
Yes.
Or,
well, I heard a story about somebody reading aloud and watching their children. And then again, I think it was that actually Andrew Pudewa tells a story about when he was reading Lord of the Rings to the kids, and the child who was building with Legos while he's reading actually was able to retell all the details, whereas the one who was just sitting perfectly attentively listening was just like in la la dreamland.
You can't judge by what you're seeing, but you get to know your children. So that's pay attention and see what's working. Just everything. You want to keep things short, bite-sized chunks. You've got projects or something that they're going to work on. And this, maybe as they get older, you're going to ask them to write a paper. You break it down into really small, manageable chunks. Structure and style. You talked about Andrew Pudewa. Structure and style is a good example of that, because it breaks that writing process down into really small, manageable chunks.
Right.
So that's kind of.
that kind of not to. We'll continue, but does that learning style then like change with age too? You know what I'm saying?
Some,
because I'm thinking Wiggly guy, how's he ever going to sit in a classroom when he gets to college?
They learn, every child, every learning style has its weak areas, and you have to work. Wiggly Willies work on self-discipline. That's just one of the things. It's like if you're taking them to mass and you're helping them learn to sit still in mass. That's a part of that training. And yes, they're not going to like it at first, but you gradually just, help them to be able to do these things. And then they usually will get better at it But, with my oldest son, he still has those tendencies. And so, he does web design. He does something, he has his own business, so he can control his time. He can go out and take a walk if he needs to. He can get on the phone and be out for a walk while he's doing his business call. He just...
Yes, well, that's interesting.
They make it work.
Yeah, right. He made it work. He worked with his strengths and got into a career that matched that. That's wonderful. Yeah.
But sometimes you'll have Wiggly Willies who still need hands-on learning. We were still doing some work with hands-on resources for algebra. There's lots of fun ways to do that. Because of my oldest son, my middle son wanted nothing to do with manipulatives. He's a competent Carl, just didn't. He said I could look at it and tell what it's going to look like. So why should I do that?
Exactly.
You analyze it. It's in his head. It's it.
And algebra does require discipline. You know what I mean? Yeah.
But you can make it. Yeah, you can make it more concrete for them.
Yeah.
But I'll give you one concrete recommendation. Unit studies tend to work well with Wiggly Willies because of the variety. And usually you've got books, real books, and activities, and a variety of things going on. So programs like Connecting with History are particularly good for Wiggly Willies.
Can you describe a unit study? I mean, we have a lot of beginners, especially since the pandemic. What's a unit study, Cathy?
A unit study designs all of your subjects around themes, a key theme. So in this case, history. So you're following through history and then studying your other subjects in relation, not math, but your other subjects, science and whatever. And unit studies vary on how many different subjects they include. But Connecting with History is fairly complex. You've got your arts and language arts and history in there. And it's pulling these things together and making connections from between the different subject areas. And because of the variety of what you're using, not at all workbooky.
Right.
That's very appealing for a Wiggly Willy.
Great.
So,
that's great.
But I could sum it up. The key things to remember for these kids are they've got that short attention span. They need multisensory learning, and you pay attention to your scheduling, your pacing, and your environment as much as you do to the curriculum choices. If you're going to be using a workbook, you do tiny bits at a time.
Yeah, no, that's a great summary. Very good. Good.
Okay. Perfect Paula. She likes your traditional curriculum much easier in the sense she likes workbook structure, routine. It's all safe. Repetition, memorization, staying in her comfort zone. But she can be the easiest when it comes to choosing curriculum, but that narrow comfort zone presents limitations. And that's where we want to work. Because she always wants to do the right thing. You have to give her a warning when you're going to do something different if it's not clearly defined. If you're going to have a discussion about questions at the end of the chapter in history, you tell her before she reads the chapter. Then she'll focus on those questions, paying careful attention as she's reading. Otherwise, she'll feel blindsided. If at the end, you say, now we're going to discuss the question, she'll say, well, you didn't tell me we were going to do that, She wants to know in advance what's coming. Okay. If you're going to use something unconventional, explain what you're doing and how it works, how it's doing what you need to do. Sometimes Perfect Paula's, they'll skate along on the surface of things. They won't ask questions or go beyond, what's right there, what's required. They won't go for deeper understandings of concepts. And this can show up in math when you get into word problems. You can have the child who goes along when they memorize all those math algorithms. They've got their math facts down. They can spout the math facts just fine, but they've got a word problem and they have to figure out how to apply this, and they're stumped because they haven't thought about concepts and why and how this works. So, sometimes you have to work with them more on the word problems rather than the computation skills. Mm-hmm. So, there are a lot of good math programs out there that stress understanding concepts. Singapore Math, Redbird Math is an online one. Math UC, probably everybody's heard of Math UC with hands-on. Yeah. They do have a real strong development of concepts in that program.
Okay. Yes. Well, I do know you did a podcast, I think, with homeschooling saints about math in particular. That's one of those big topics. Yes.
Yeah, it seems to be one of the most problematic areas, and it's
Right.
one of the easiest to address for learning
Right. And
styles.
to find a variety of techniques for it.
Yeah.
Exactly. Would you say that perfect Paula, though, is also hesitant to start something new? Like, because you said she
Right.
wants, yeah.
It's got to be predictable. So
Gotcha.
if you're going to do something new, she's got to, if it's really different, and there are some programs that are very different looking. Oh, Matthew C would be, like that. Here, we're going to pull these out. Maybe we're going to watch the video together. Whatever. It's like, well, this doesn't look like math to me. At first. But now their books have gotten so they look more like traditional books. They used to not so much, but now they look pretty traditional when you get to the workbook end of it.
Correct. Okay. So then you would take the time with that child to really always, not blindside, as you said. That's
right. Prepare them. And, if they're comfortable using a traditional math program, there's nothing wrong with that, as long as you work through the conceptual understanding, get them working on word problems and why is that working, how do you choose your methods of solving a problem? Okay.
Yep.
Okay, Competent Carl. So remember, he's the one who likes to be self-directed, wants to be in control. You need to be efficient. Whatever you're using, it needs to be efficient. They don't like these programs with lots of bells and whistles. They don't like busy work.
Yes.
They often don't like unit studies with stories and activities. They don't want to do those things they think are a waste of time. They've got their own ideas about how they want to be spending their time. So, they'll argue with you about this.
Will they be argumentative?
Yeah, they can be argumentative, and sometimes they're right, but not always.
Yes.
If they can demonstrate that they've mastered something, then you can let them skip something. If they really, can show you, then okay.
Yes.
Give them the opportunity.
One again too, because that's another one I hear parents are like, no, we can't skip things. But yes.
Yeah. Well, like Saxon Math says, don't skip any problems.
Right.
So assign every other problem and see how it goes, I know they've got that spiral thing where they're doing it, but there's so much repetition in there that
there is.
If they're getting it or just acing it all the time, they don't have to do everything.
Yes.
So
yes, and I can understand from a parent because they feel like, well, I don't know what's going to come, especially with their oldest. Let's not skip anything. But I think from our lofty position, seeing it back, you can skip if they've mastered it.
Yeah. How much do you remember of what you were taught in school? I mean,
yes,
just think about it.
Well said, Cathy. Exactly.
Yeah. Okay, so continue with Competent. He doesn't like to listen to other people talking. Some Competent Carls are talkative, others are introverted, but either way, they don't like to just listen. They'd rather figure things out for themselves. They'd like to be talking themselves if they're talkative, but they don't really like lectures too much. They like independent work. So here's along that line. Don't give them information when you can send them out to find it. So like if you're doing history, don't read 30 pages in your text, but give them a question like, who started the Second World War and why?
Wow.
And let them go figure it out. And, you can suggest resources, suggest places to look if that helps you. It depends on their age and their ability. You have to work around. But whenever you can, give them a question to pursue rather than the information.
Yeah, I mean, isn't that part of learning how to also ask what questions to ask? You know what I'm saying too?
Yeah. Yes. For them especially too. I think this is true for all of our kids, that we should be giving them these kinds of things to help them learn how to teach themselves. But, that process is different with different types of learners. But the Competent Carl, you can do this sooner. With others, you gradually do it. But, even my Wiggly Willy oldest son, I think I've told this story in other, lots of other places, but he was interested in archery from the time he was really little. I knew nothing about archery. He, went to the library, read every book in the library on archery. My child, who was Wiggly, just devoted himself to figuring this out, carved his own bows and arrows from, wood, trees.
Wow.
Got a bow and arrow that got, in Boy Scouts, took the Boy Scout merit badge, got really good at it. He ended up being an archery instructor for a while and did a number of competitions. He just loved archery.
So that proves that Wiggly Willie is Ken, when he's interested, totally focused down.
Totally. Yeah. And go teach themselves. And I think a lot of our kids can do this if we give them the opportunity. Yes. And I couldn't help him. I didn't know anything. So he was really on his own. Right. And I saw that my other children in other areas too. So
but what that did for him in terms of his giving him that sense of success, in the sense that mom didn't know the answers and I figured it out, and he soared with it. That's such a beautiful story.
Yeah. But this is something we should be doing with all of our kids at the right time for the right things. Okay. So anyway, so Competent Carls, give them independent work, let them work on projects. Long-term independent projects work well. And you can even do contracts with them, even maybe around 4th or 5th grade. Again, knowing your goals, what you want to learn, what you want them to learn.
Right.
Sit down with them and have a discussion about how do you want to learn this, and suggest some possible ways of doing it. Agree on it, write it down. Here are the milestones. You're going to do this, you're going to do that. It's going to get turned in by this time. Check in with them every once in a while, but turn them loose. Let them just do that independent project. Other types of learners, you might not do this until high school. But with a Competent Carl, you can do it earlier. Right. And then they're off on their own and doing what makes them happy, and they'll do much better.
So again, honing in on their learning style, knowing what works best for them, and actually changing up the process, which is kind of outside of, again, your traditional school idea. Give mommy that permission to do that. I think it's brilliant. Yeah, great. Yeah. Great ideas.
Yeah. Good. So, and this transfers over to other areas of the curriculum too, the things we're talking about here, and just giving them room. If you're going to do science, give them, something with experiments and things that have real questions presented to them, something to think about, not just, an experiment that proves what the information already tells you. Mm-hmm. But a real experiment where they're going to, like you talked about the TOPS. I don't know if people are familiar with the TOPS program. It's not very well known. It's really, really old, but it's really good.
It is really good. It's very simple, deceptively simple. But, my husband and I were scientists, and it's so true. We see, because I always say what makes great scientists are people who have an insatiable need to know. And they will just persevere until they get to those answers. And to be able, and so to give your kids that little snippet of experience of testing with things and learning from what you're testing is a really great process.
Well, and these kids, oftentimes they'll shine at robotics, that type of thing. I have a Sony Couve kit that I had gotten for review. It's a robotics kit. It's a pretty expensive one, but that's a great thing for a Competent Carl. They give you projects, there's online, there's, steps to go through, but you've got to troubleshoot, because often it's not, you're going to do something wrong, and you just have to figure out why is it not working. And they have where you can go back and you can troubleshoot the program and find out where you've gone wrong, try and fix it. And great type of thing for Competent Carl. And I'm sure there's others out there too. Mm-hmm. But computer-based coding and that sort of thing usually really appeals to them.
Yes.
Okay, Sociable Sue, we can move on. Sociable Sue can be the hardest to choose curriculum for, because she's often motivated by things you can't control. It's what are her friends doing? If her best friend is using Saxon math, well, of course she wants to use Saxon math, whether or not that really works for her. And she'll be motivated to make it work because her friend's doing it.
Well, that personality, and I kind of, do you see that rear its head at a certain age? You know what I mean? Where. Yeah,
more so, girls, girls around, 5th, 6th grade, especially. Oh, yeah, they get so peer dependent, always checking to see what the other one's doing first.
Yes, the little tweens. Right.
Yeah.
Now, when you talk about homeschoolers, how does that play out with siblings? Are they looking at each other, what each other is doing? How does that play out?
Well, they do, but that sociable Sue is not as concerned with their siblings. Sometimes, they're concerned about their friends, that and most homeschoolers have friends in spite of what some people think they have friends, and they're going to group classes and they're around other kids. And so they do know what other people are thinking and doing. So
again,
that's usually more important. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And because, they like group activities. These are the kids that will thrive in a group class and not do so well. You try to put them in independent study. They just do not do well at all. They'll just die.
Well, even as a young adult, I know my youngest son is just, as he was discerning computer science, he was in this coding class, but it was so isolated, and he is a sociable guy. And he's like, I need to be a part of a team. And he realized that the kind of computer science had to be more project oriented. We've got this problem to solve and we work together. Yeah.
That's important to figure out because it's a whole different approach. Yeah.
Yes.
And sociable Sues will usually do well with unit study type things, connecting it with history. I mentioned history links, another unit study. And the story of civilization. Some Catholics are getting together and using the story of civilization together. That it's because of the social setting, not that the curriculum is designed for that so much, but it can fit in that kind of thing. So that works. Just doing it as a group. That's all.
Right.
There's lots of different things.
Right. And as far as groups, I know, and again, on your review site, you do talk about things like, I know you did a review for Catholic Schoolhouse or places that meet once a week, or co-op or things like that. Because homeschoolers a lot of times feel like, what activities are there that I can do as a group, especially, and I do find it hard for young ladies, to find, activities. Sometimes it is hard. The world wants them to be, I think, a little more mature.
Inappropriately mature.
Yes, inappropriately well said. Exactly. So would they be more the ones you enroll in drama or debate or things like that?
Competent Carls make better debaters. Sociable Sues don't want to hurt anybody's feelings, so they are terrible debaters usually. But But group classes make all the difference in the world.
Yes. And group classes too online. I know with Homeschool Connections, they have, they even have in their community a teen group, so there is this opportunity.
Yeah, there's lots of ways to do it.
Even if you live remotely in this and that is the blessing of technology this way.
Sometimes it can work if they've got a sibling that's close enough in age and personality that they can work together.
Yeah,
that can provide that, but oftentimes they want to be interacting with those outside their family. There's that sociable Sue thing is really the world out there wanting recognition. They really do. They care so much about what people think. They want to be doing public presentations. They want to be sharing things with other people. So, these are the ones. Yes, they would be into drama.
Even all groups. It could be all groups. Even
Just give me an audience because then they're getting back the feedback, the personal affirmation that they're wanting. Here I am, the star. Of course, you can overfeed that too much. So you have to be careful.
Again, the virtues come in there too, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
And it is about getting outside of ourselves and helping our children to understand. It's not all about them, especially, the world tries to tell you in teen years, but it's putting them out there to be of service to others.
Yeah, because they have to learn how to work independently. It's not always about having somebody watching and responding to what you do. What do you do when you're alone? And that's, again, back to the virtues.
Yes.
But when you're trying to teach them something new, though, again, don't just give them something to go off and learn it independently. Probably not going to happen.
Great. So as far as, again, when I think about all the different styles, like, again, in summary, learn it first. You're saying learn first yourself, because you tend to gravitate towards a curriculum that may suit yourself, may not work with your children. And then you also had said about just giving yourself permission to even just, skip or be, not have to do everything, because you can see when you have multiple children, right? How am I going to do this for everybody? Right. Yeah. And then to be patient with yourself to kind of discover all those things.
And sometimes it's finding that compromise that's going to help you give your children what they need, but keep you within a functional comfort zone.
Yeah.
Because, we can only go so far out of our comfort zone, the way we do things.
So you talked about, so you would outsource sometimes.
Sometimes you outsource, but sometimes you like for math, making math meaningful from Cornerstone Curriculum. It's a manipulative based program.
Right.
And it scripts it. So mom, if you say you've got a perfect Paula mom, she's got a script, say this, do this, while the child is working with the manipulatives, doing this hands-on thing. But it's scripted there. So you can, you're asking questions, interacting, but it's laid out. So you're totally in your comfort zone.
Right.
Giving him the hands-on program.
It was like all about spelling. Okay. I was a terrible speller, but again, homeschooling my children, I've now learned to spell. Yeah. Mommy does learn in the process.
Oh, don't we?
But I loved it because it was mommy says this, child does that. And you're right. It suited me, but it was sensory based, which had which suited, some of my children who needed that. I didn't need that, but they needed it. So finding materials that work for both.
All about spelling and logic of English. There are a number of programs out there that are like that, so giving you, again, though, there's so many components in those programs. Sometimes it's overkill, and we have to be in charge of the curriculum. And this is, again, permission. You don't have to use everything in the program. If something seems a waste of time, just skip it and do what's important.
Yes. I thought about printing up a PDF that just says permission slip in the beginning of each year. You just sign off. I give myself permission to be in control of this. Yes.
Yeah. I know that's hard, and especially for new homeschoolers. You don't know what you don't know, but pay attention to your children if it feels right,
Yes. And when you say that, I think one of the beautiful things you brought up, Cathy, is that what do you remember from your childhood? And what are your goals for your children? It's kind of getting right back to that. And I think that was so important for you to.
Well, and the other, I'm talking to Catholics here. Remember the Holy Spirit in this. God cares more about our kids than we do. And I can't tell you the times, when I felt, the Holy Spirit giving me the inspiration, the ideas I needed, what to do with my kids. Those days when I'm just tearing my hair out, this isn't working. Coming up with a fresh way of doing it. And this was back, we didn't have all the choices we have now. I had to make it up. But God is good. We'll know what to do. We'll be able to figure it out. If we pray about it and trust God to lead us in this too. It's just not all about us knowing everything and being super smart about how to know all these different learning methods.
Yes, that's very beautiful. It's true. The trust in the graces that he gives us. And he loves us infinitely more. And he loves our children infinitely better than we do. So great. Well, this has been incredible information. I love that we're recording this so that people can go back to this. Cathy has also put together a handout sheet, which we will provide a link for a download. And on that handout, you want to describe a little bit what that will be on there?
I think I have just really short bullet points on the learning styles, so you can quickly identify them. That's primarily what's on there.
And then I would encourage people to go to CathyDuffyReviews.com, because as we said, those detailed descriptions, you'll be able to notice the things we talked about and match them to your children. What an incredible resource. Anything else?
There's one more thing on the website that people miss. We added when we did the How to Choose book.
Okay.
We added an advanced search tool. There's, a regular simple search, but there's an advanced search on there. And if you go into the advanced search, you can click off, third grade history, American history, Catholic point of view, and then there are all different kinds of things you can click off that pertain to learning styles. Is it using real books? Is it hands-on? Does it have worksheets? That kind of thing. So
you can advanced search even by learning styles. Wow.
Yeah.
So fabulous.
People have asked me to put Wiggly Willy, Competent Carl to kind of, simplify that, but I kind of moved away from doing that because so many people were coming to my website who didn't know what Wiggly Willy, Perfect Paola, et cetera, were. So I stopped doing that, but I may, I was talking to my web guy about trying to create a shortcut for that.
We should do that because, again, maybe I can see little dolls, a little animated, and do a little video of each personality, and then we'll know. Sounds fun. Yeah. Oh my gosh, this has been such a delight. This is so great. Any parting last words you'd like to send to anybody? We covered so much. I think
we've covered a lot.
That's good. Yeah. Good. Yeah. Great. Any place, are you going to be doing any speaking engagements soon or any place? I love doing things from the web. Traveling and speaking is just such hard work. I've kind of, don't really want to do that now. No, it's true. And as I said, we do reach international and homeschooling is growing in places like in Australia and the Philippines. They use a lot of American materials. So, they go to CathyDuffyReviews.com and whatever country you're in. Yeah. and you're reaching people all over the world, Cathy. And it's just such a blessing and a gift. Mm-hmm. Well, again, I know, please everybody keep Cathy, her ministry in your prayers. I know she has a special intention. Please pray for her. And I thank you so much. I invite everybody to come to our website, CatholicHomeschoolConference.com. There's a couple things coming up soon in there. There's always going to be news, but I do have a new teaching video workshop that will be starting in the end of July. Free little teaching workshop. We're going to touch upon a lot of the stuff that Cathy we've talked about today here too. But we have the conference in October for high schoolers, so get that also on your calendar, and you can reach us at info@CatholicHomeschoolConference.com, on our handle YouTube at Catholic Homeschool, and on Instagram at Catholic Homeschool. Thank you again, everybody, for joining us. May you all have a beautiful, blessed day. God bless.